You made it to level 2, deeper questions leading to deeper answers. I'm Tomas Garza, and I'm here to help you decide to transform. I'll be setting the pace for the process to support your unfolding. Learn and commit to a practice that brings simplicity and an awareness of what is ready to be released. Join me now and allow the experience of a deeper sense of love. Welcome to Decide to Transform. I'm so happy that you're joining us here today. I'm your host, Tomas Garza, and with me, joining me from Scottsdale, Arizona, is transformational business coach Therese Skelly. Now, this is a conversation I've been looking forward to having for some time, and it's going to be fun. And I'll read Therese's bio for you here by way of introduction, and you will know, I guarantee you, you will know precisely what I mean by that. Fun. So Therese, in her own words, writes, whip smart, funny, and fiercely devoted stand for her clients' brilliance. Therese Skelly mentors mission-driven leaders and entrepreneurs globally who are ready to bust shame, clear blocks, and live their best life without apology. Through an intuitive process and her take no prisoners Mama T attitude. Mama T attitude. I'm going to ask you about that. She helps her clients move past. Clients move past obstacles, holding them back from being truly happy, empowered, and free. Therese is a former therapist turned mentor who lives in Scottsdale, Arizona, with her pup Murphy, and dotes on her two grown boys, Danny and John. When she isn't working with clients or cooking up a storm in the kitchen, you can find her on the road, on the back of her boyfriend's motorcycle, living life to the fullest. Well, all right. Therese, welcome.
And full disclosure, I do have to say though, a client wrote a bio for me, just out of the blue. It was an absolute gift. And I'm like, oh, that's better than I could have done. So that was written by a client, but she totally captured my vibe. So I didn't write it, but I received it and I live it. So.
I think you should just take credit for it. But thank you to your client. Yes,
sure,
from all of us. Yeah. No, I love that because it captures the vibe. That's really exactly what we're going for here. And you're most welcome. And I'm so happy to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. We have both looked forward to this call. A few things have gotten in the way. So it's like, yay, we're finally here. So
yeah. Well, and sometimes, delays happen and you wind up sitting down to the microphone on the day you're supposed to.
100%.
And here we are.
Here we are, yeah.
So, one of the things that really intrigues me is you've got a story. You're a transformational business coach, but you did not start out that way. You began as a therapist. So would you say some more about what kind of therapy you used to do? You don't have to mention names or anything.
Yeah. Well, so that is a really cool story. I love doing therapy, and my background, I actually have a degree in criminal justice. I've worked in a women's prison. Not many people can say that. And then I moved on from criminal justice to getting a master's degree in counseling. And so I worked at a psychiatric hospital, and then I landed in a chemical dependency treatment center. I didn't land in, I worked in that. Let me clarify. I was a therapist. So I worked with drug addicts, alcoholics, codependents, couples at a community mental health treatment center for about 3 years, until one day I realized that the therapists were not as healthy as some of the patients we were seeing, and it was kind of dysfunctional. And so I started in 1988, I think. I started my own practice. So then I was in the business of just my own practice. And what was really cool is that at the time, my marketing strategy was, please God, send me a client. Like, that's all I knew. I didn't know how to do any marketing, because I think you can have a practice and not have a business, right? And this was in the late 80s, early 90s. I got nothing in terms of the way of education. And you didn't ask this, but I'm going to tell you how I transitioned to business coaching, because it's a kind of a cool story that fits with this interview. And so I was doing therapy, and I loved it. I never saw myself doing anything else, because I loved it. I love people's stories. I love going deep, and it was just magical. And I would see this medical intuitive 3 times a year, and she'd say, you're going to be doing something else. And I'm like, what? I would never leave therapy, because I didn't know what else I do. And every time I say it, she's like, no, there's something else. There's something else. And I never understood what it was. And then one day I got the idea to go to life coaching school. That was in 2001, 20 years ago. I went to life coaching school and I'd gone to, I think, a networking meeting. And I got on there back then, Tomas, having a newsletter. Wow. Like people would be like, you have a newsletter? Like that was a really big deal, right? And so I got on this newsletter list and there was an ad for business coaches wanted. Now here's what you have to
Okay.
know. Remember, I said I worked in a women's prison. I worked in psychiatric hospitals
Yeah.
and with addicts. I never took a business class. I never read a business book. I never worked in the business world.
Mhm.
So what I know is that my soul absolutely guided me because my head, as I'm, hitting the keyboard, typing out the application, my head is going, what the hell are you thinking, right? And yet my
Mhm.
soul knew exactly where I needed to be. And that one decision changed the whole trajectory of my life. And so the next day I was a business coach. I got hired. Some fool took advantage, like they're like, whoa, you got great potential. And I just learned everything. I learned it really, really, really well. But the journey of like owning my value, learning to talk about my business, understanding what the heck to do and how do you sell yourself, I didn't have any of that. And so there was a lot of fraud factor, imposter syndrome, shame, all the things I teach today, basically, because I've gone through them.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
it was the first time I remember my soul just going, go here, do this. And I didn't fight it. I listened, and it was the best thing I ever did.
Okay. Well, I love that. Yeah. And you get we all get strong hits all the time, but the
Right.
question is, are we actually paying attention?
100%. Especially when
Right.
it sounds crazy, especially when it's like,
Mm.
who, me? Are you
Mhm.
freaking kidding me? You know what I mean? Like one of those
Yeah.
Moses moments, like, what? I can't do this. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, and because this was the first time that that happened for
Mhm.
you, that you went with a strong intuitive hit. What was different about this time that led you to, silence, if you did silence the voice that
Yeah.
says, "Who are you to be doing this? This is crazy, not you." I mean, what was different about this
I
time?
don't know. That's the thing. I'm sure because I'm super intuitive. As
Mhm.
you know, as we get older, I feel like we own those gifts more.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
I just used to think I was a therapist. I'd be like, oh, I just was a therapist. I know stuff. Well, I knew therapy stuff, right? I didn't know the depth of the guidance that I was getting. So um, I'm sure I listened, but for whatever reason with this one, because it was so crazy, literally I thought Excel was a phone company. I literally didn't even know what a spreadsheet was. Like, I mean, I was the least likely. And so I think it was so absurd. I must have thought, I got nothing to lose. Who cares? I don't know what it was, but I absolutely know overarching. It was my soul that just said, nope. And everything changed. My marriage ended. My peer groups changed. Who I was, like it literally more than getting married, having children, getting divorced, more than anything, that one decision just changed everything. So I know it was the soul moving me in the direction I was supposed to be in.
Okay. Well, and it's interesting. You made that decision and you started moving in that direction. Then,
Yes.
you had a marriage that
Yes.
ended
Yes.
as a result of that. Now,
Yes.
was that abrupt or, what did that look like?
You know, so I was married to a man, probably we were better friends than husband and wife.
Okay.
He full disclosure, he was an addict off and on. He made a bunch of money. He was a
I see.
functional person, but he was an episodic addict. So I was dealing with that. Talk about shame. Hi, I'm going to life coach you, but yeah, my husband just got, what I mean? Like that was very difficult.
Right.
Um, and when I was a therapist, I think there's a resonance, right? And so I was resonating at the vibe of this, I can still tolerate. I had very small children. And so I think with a woman, or maybe a man too, it's harder to leave a relationship when there are small children.
Mhm. Right. Oh,
And
yeah.
so we were great friends. We had a lovely life. And when I shifted into being an entrepreneur and shifted into meeting people for whom spirituality was front and center, who lived bigger lives, who were really mission driven. I remember this moment of thinking, I wouldn't want him at the dinner table with those people. And he was lovely, like literally everybody loved him. When he died, oh my gosh, like
Mm.
everybody, he was larger than life. He was the most lovely person, but in consciousness, he was not he and it was such a weird, like, wow, all these new people. So I became somebody different.
Okay.
And I think he stopped, he just didn't get it. And he stopped, he just chose something different. He ended up being with somebody that allowed him to be an addict.
Uh,
And so
sure.
that's what he
Okay.
chose,
Mhm.
so that
Mhm.
was the end. So, but the caveat, we stayed friends until his death. We were best of friends. We co-parented really well. Like he was my best friend till the very end. So
Okay.
we worked it out
Yeah.
really well.
Good. Well, and that, as I was sharing with you before we began recording, I spent 13 years in family mediation. So I know
Wow. You
from
know how hard that is.
experience of literally thousands of clients that it
Yeah,
doesn't always work that way.
it doesn't
So
at all. Yeah,
I'm
very
glad
true.
you all were able to do that.
Yeah.
And, the thing that strikes me so much about that is when a person pays attention to the voice of
Hmm.
spirit, of
Hmm.
God, however they want to characterize or classify that,
Yeah.
and begins to take action, then massive change happens. I
Hmm.
mean, and
Yeah.
you experience that as like a reworking of
Yes.
your whole life.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know that I would have called it that at the time,
Okay.
because when you're in it and you're kind of new to it, I was like, oh crap. Like, wait, what? I'm divorced? Wait, what? You know what I mean? It,
Hmm,
it was
hmm. Oh,
it was
yeah.
quite surprising until after a few years later, I would be like, oh, thank God he had the courage to leave me. Because I wouldn't. I'm freaking loyal. I'm a mom. I'm gonna take care of my babies and my family, right? And literally the best thing that ever happened was when he woke up one day and said, I can't keep doing this. So he freed me. He gave me a gift that I couldn't give myself.
Okay.
So it took a few years to get like, oh, thank God that happened. I was a little freaked out in the beginning, to if I be really honest.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, there are people out there listening that could be right now listening to this show that are right
Yeah.
in the midst of that, and it's a good and a beautiful message to them that it actually does improve. But gosh, at the time, it doesn't feel
Yeah.
like it.
Well, here's what I learned, Thomas, and it was because I was single for, well, I'm in a relationship now, but I've been a single, not
Mhm.
married woman for like 15 years.
Mhm, mhm.
And what I realized, and this finally this became my operating system, because I was kind of a crazy dater in the beginning, and I had crazy, married 20 years. I was like, whoa, I went a little
Mhm,
wild.
mhm, mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
we all do that. Like, we all have those stories, right? And so, um, what I learned is that for everything that was taken away, it would be replaced with something better.
Mm, mhm.
And so that to me was divine order. And so I stopped fighting it. I would feel the pain. Because I'm very much, you got to process the trauma and the feelings and the emotions of it. And to me, there was always a promise. There was always like, something better is coming for you. And that always, like, that guiding light always just, that was like my North Star, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, lost that relationship, but I'm gonna get a better one. And I just knew it, and I know it all the time. So if you're listening and you're this, like, hang in there and trust that whatever's happening, Michael Beckwith says it's not happening to you, it's happening for you.
Mhm.
That is such a powerful tenet to live by.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And what else would you say to somebody that's maybe going through something like this right now? Any other suggestions based on your own experience? Because it is happening for all of us, but in the
Yeah,
moment, it really doesn't
yeah.
feel like it.
Whew, no. Well, number one, obviously, I'm going to always say feel all the feelings. I run women's groups, and
Mhm.
very often they're like, oh, well, I should forgive. No, you shouldn't. Not yet. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to scream and yell and swear and be angry, sometimes you have to bow. Here's what I say: bow to the altar of what just happened to you. Because
Okay.
we tend to spiritually bypass. We're like, oh, well, it's for my highest good. God's in charge. And our body's freaking responding to trauma, right? I very much understand trauma. And so there's the dance of, like, you have just be raw, be real, have somebody that you can just be like the ugly cry or scream and yell, or like, get that out. Do not try to go to the spiritual too quickly.
Okay.
But it's the both, like, the both can occur.
Mhm.
um when Jim and I got divorced, I remember saying to myself, I'm going to use this as an example to other people. And I didn't even know what that meant. I think at our church they were doing the real love stuff, and I was like, wow, this doesn't have contentious, horrible, I hate that bastard divorce. Do it differently. And so I would be in the pain, and I would also be in the who do I want to show up as? Like,
Oh.
what do I want my kids to see? How
Mhm.
do I want to? And literally, people would say, like your divorce was like inspirational to people actually creating great partnership and co-parenting. But it was because I decided, because trust me, I could be the like, oh, you won't believe what that man did to me. Like I got like effed over in many ways, right? And I could have stayed
Mhm.
a victim, and I felt that sometimes. But at the end of the day, I was like, no, 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 no. I'm not going to be that. So you really can transcend if you just use it as like, I'm going to grow through this. Who am I going to be? How do I want to show up? Because
Mhm.
this pain's going to end. This anger is going to end. This crap you're in is going to end. And what do you want at the end of the day? How do you want to be standing after that?
Okay. Yeah. Well, and really interesting things that let's talk a little bit more
Okay.
about. I mean, I'm taking some notes as we're talking and feel all the feelings and bypassing. So listeners may be
Mm-hmm.
familiar with the term spiritual bypassing. Oh, yes. And you see this in your groups. You may have
Yes.
seen that in your life as well. But you know, in your opinion, what is the most important part? Why is it so important to allow yourself to feel everything?
Yeah. How do I explain that? When something happens to us, our body can't differentiate, right?
Yeah.
So let's say let's say my husband would have overdosed, right? Let's just say
Mhm,
that
mhm.
because that happened. Okay.
Okay.
So I go through trauma, right? I'm like, and my body literally, oh my God, he's being wheeled out on a stretcher. Whatever. Your body is going to have a response. And then if you do not attend to that, that energy is going to get stuck in you.
Uh-huh.
It can
Right.
create a literal PTSD response, or
Mhm.
it can create just locked in trauma. And so, um, Joe Dispenza talks about, we all do this, right? Have you ever had this where you just keep looping and just thinking over and over and over and over? You know what I mean? Like you keep revisiting.
Yes.
That's because there's trauma released that's not been released from you. So as much as your like cool spiritual self is like, oh, it's in God's will. If your body's like, I'm being attacked, like,
Mhm.
yeah, that was gonna win. The trauma response always wins, and you are
Yeah.
always jacked up physiologically. So that way you might have like low level anxiety, you might have just irritation, you might have trouble sleeping, you might there's just a cascade of things that can happen if it's a trauma response. So when people come to me and say, oh, this thing happened to me, but I need to let it go, I'll be like, hold on, what does your body think?
Okay.
And we don't often ask our bodies, because we live
Mhm.
from the neck. Many of us live from the neck up, right? And our brain, well, I got her. So and so says you got to forgive. Absolutely, you do, but maybe not at phase one. Maybe that's phase five, right? Maybe you
Mhm.
release the trauma. You bow to. Sometimes things are, and you understand this, Thomas, like an existential crisis. Like you have to just go,
Yeah.
how the hell do I even make sense of this now? Happen like what? I'm married to a freaking addict that overdosed. What the heck? Like that's a lot of processing. And so there's multi-layer processing. And then when everything's calmed down, then you have the luxury of saying, you know what? Okay, I can let that go now. But not until that work.
Right. Yeah, and it's the tendency of so many people just to try to end around that because
Exactly.
naturally, as human beings, we don't want to dive into what
No,
feels bad.
I know, I know. Yes, yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Well, and a it's a wonderful question. What does your body think?
Yeah.
So, at what point in your life did you realize, did it really dawn on you that you were highly intuitive like that and you could trust your body wisdom?
I fought it for a really long time. I wish it would have gone faster.
Okay.
Um, Probably 8 years ago, she's a seven-figure business coach. I was hanging out with her and
Mhm.
here, and she said, unless you start saying you're a healer, you're never going to make money. And I was like, oh, psh, shut up. What? Like, I was so afraid. I was like, oh my God, people are going to throw me off the stage. What are you talking about? And so I just was like, shh, 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 no, no, no. And then one of my friends was like, people are healed just being in your presence.
Okay.
But I think, unfortunately, Tomas, because of my own codependency, all the things we talk about, the shame, the proving energy,
Mhm.
I was still acting from a place of I have to overgive, overdo. So I had trouble knowing I was enough.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
And so when you're in this mode of having to overgive and overdo, you work really hard as opposed to like, let me just wait for something. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I would be working with clients, and I'm super intuitive. I do a lot of clearing and energy healing and stuff, but
Yeah.
I never studied anybody's system. Like it
Okay.
just came out of me, right? So I was working with a client like years of years ago, and I heard in my head, this is a curse. And I literally am like,
Mm.
oh shit, wait, what?
Uh-oh. Yeah. Mhm.
and then it said you can clear it. I was like, I don't know how to clear curses. And it was like, yes, you do. So that stuff kept happening. And I'm like, I do? Like, yep, you do. And so I just, okay, well, I guess we do this. And so that's how it developed. And after everything that happened, I would just be like, whoa, I can't believe it. Oh my, like, wow, that was, because I was so
Mm.
startled by the power I have, I guess, like the intuition and the work. And now I'm more
Yeah.
like, yeah, I got it.
All
But it
right.
took a really long time to accept it.
Okay. Yeah, I love that because I know that there are people listening that are fighting themselves on the same thing,
Yeah,
whether it's their intuition or whether it's another, well, I mean, you can call it a gift, but it's
yeah,
something that this
absolutely.
is innate that
Hmm.
you're born with. And yeah, so in what part of, as an intuitive, in what part of your body do you get the strongest hits? How does that work for you?
Um, I used to say I heard, but I don't know that I heard as much as I just knew. It would drop in.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't used to get the physical stuff. Now I like I'll give you a number of years ago. I was at church and sitting next to a woman, and I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden I'm like feeling like I'm gonna pass out, just like, oh my God, what is wrong with me? Moments later, and she's not doing anything; she's just sitting there. Moments later, the
Mhm.
fire department comes, and she's having a heart attack.
Oh.
So my body was picking up what she was going through.
Mhm.
So I also have that, and so sometimes I'll be with clients, and I'll be like, oh, hold on, I can feel that in my throat, like my body is now getting more tuned with sensation. And so
Okay.
it's the knowing first, then the body stuff.
All right. Yeah, it's very interesting because some hits can be so strong and
Oh, yeah.
visceral, and others lighter. But yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you that. Now, when you're working with clients, I
Mhm.
promised all of our listeners I did not forget, because I often do, but I did not forget to ask you about your Mama T attitude.
Mama
Yeah, tell me
T.
about Mama T.
Mama T. I love this. So probably 5 years ago, I was working. Normally my, I don't like the word middle age, but my clients generally are 40, 50. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
in this particular group, I had like a 20 something and a 30 something, so
Mhm.
younger. And I would be working with them, and they'd be like, "Oh, Mama T," and so they started calling me Mama T. And it's like a brand. It's just like, not on my watch. Like nobody's gonna mess with you on my watch. Like so, it's like this fierce mama bear energy that I
Mhm.
really like because that's who I
Okay,
am.
yeah.
I'm very much that. And so Mama T wisdom is like, come on,
Mhm,
it's a
mhm.
good Mama T tough love kind of. So that's what that is.
All right. Well, I love that. Yeah, I knew there was a story behind that.
Yeah, yeah.
And you did mention that you have children, so
Uh-huh. There
there
we go.
there you go. Okay. Yeah, and it's a take no prisoners approach. Now, you mentioned that one of the things that you help your clients do is bust shame. So
Yeah.
would you say some more about that? How does that play
I
out
would
for you?
love to, because
Okay.
it's one of those. Tomas, it's one of those things, I was a psychotherapist and you worked in the industry as well. So you
Mhm.
understand nobody wants to hear about shame.
No.
If I like go, hi, you want to heal your shame, people like look at you like you're a nut job, right?
Mhm.
But so here's what I know. Generally from trauma or from our environment, or we bring in ancestral shame, we bring in generational shame, we carry, there's the field of epigenetics that literally is showing that in addition to inheriting the blue eyes and this fair skin, you also inherit the trauma
Yeah.
of our ancestors. And so shame is the belief, like guilt is what you do, shame is who you are. So guilt is if I say something snotty against you or something, I could go, oh god, I feel like such a jerk, I shouldn't have said that, I feel bad, and then I can make amends. So guilt is literally about your behavior, and it kind of informs, like, I don't want to be gossipy, I shouldn't talk that way, right?
Mhm.
Shame is literally who you are is wrong.
Right.
Your being is wrong. I have a lot of my work I do, weirdly, I'll find the energetic block, and it will be something like, what happened when you were in utero?
Mm.
Like, it's kind of funny because I'm working on people's business by going in to their in utero experience,
Yes.
and I'll hear, oh, my father wanted a boy and this is a girl.
Mhm.
So their very beingness was a mistake. Their very beingness was wrong, right? And
Mm.
so how in the world do you create a business, create a life, try to sell yourself, try to help people with fundamentally you shouldn't even be here? Like, so those are some little stories of shame that people don't understand how much it affects you. And
Mhm.
so I do a lot of teaching on shame. Also, shame is like the nasty little thing that is sneaky. I call it a sneaky bitch. It's so
Oh,
sneaky,
what
and
is that?
it shows up as like procrastination and perfectionism. Like, there's many faces of it, so people don't put
Mhm.
the word shame on it,
Yeah.
but it's like, it's just never good enough, or I can't ask for help. Like, there's many ways that it shows up, and the origin, I can literally go, oh, boom, that's shame, and here's where it started for you. So
Okay.
it's
And where does one take it from there? Yeah, let's say you're working with a
that's a
client and you determine that it
yeah,
started, well, in utero.
yeah. Um, well, I could do an energetic release. So, but sometimes I feel like there's a lot of things, if you just understand context, if you understand perhaps like, okay, it happened when you were 7 and here's why. So next time you get triggered, there's a differentiation. You can say, wait, I'm 40 years old, but I feel in this moment like that 7-year-old. So it's like parts work, right?
Mhm.
Because I'll say, how old do you feel right now? Is the grown up driving the bus? Is the grown up running your business? Or is the 7-year-old? And so
Uh,
that's a great question. Ask yourself, when you're triggered, how old do you feel chronologically? And if you get really honest, you're like, oh crap, 12. Okay, what was going on when you were 12? And so if you understand, we call these ego states or parts, they literally can run our lives and our businesses. So if you can pull it out of you, so instead of saying, oh, I suck, or
yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm a loser, the language would be, isn't that interesting? There's a 12-year-old part in me that feels really triggered right now. Then you have compassion for that part. Then you can have a conversation with the part. Then you can have that part release whatever happened,
Mhm.
and you're back in your grown, resourceful self. So
Right.
that's just one quick teaching on
Sure.
that.
Yeah, and well, and I'm sure there are dozens and dozens of techniques, but it just seems like such important and deep work because shame is it's really foundational with a lot of people. And you mentioned
Absolutely.
there are dozens and dozens of ways that it shows up in life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and that is something that you help them with, and also it's clearing blocks. Now, I want to back all the way up
Okay.
because when you began your therapy practice, and I love that you said I wound up in a women's prison working there, of course.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
And they didn't admit me. I got to leave at night. That was it. Yeah. Go ahead.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah, I love that. How did it? I meant to ask you. I want to ask you now.
Yeah.
How did you wind up there? I mean, what do you
It's
suppose
so
was the
bizarre.
universal attraction to that?
Well, I was Grand Canyon University. Well, it was a college back then. It was called Grand Canyon College,
Okay.
and I just was taking whatever education. I didn't have a major. I was just taking, whatever my graduate or my degree was.
Mhm.
And I met a teacher that taught criminal justice, and I just fell in love with her. And I fell in love with her because I'm very much into social justice, and I've always,
Mhm.
fight for the underdog. And I
Yeah.
just was like, oh my gosh, she was the story she told. I was fascinated with it, and so then I majored in it. Um, but it was very difficult for me because you don't put a 25-year-old codependent in a prison and tell them to have boundaries, right? And so
Yeah.
the why it happened for me, it wasn't good because it's a horrible system. I mean, our justice system, it is and I was at a minimum security prison, so that wasn't as bad. But
Okay.
what I learned is interesting. There, but for the grace of God, go I. And I just got to say this word, the mind fuck of it was
Oh, yeah.
I loved some of those inmates.
Oh,
I saw in them like, oh, you were being abused and raped and assaulted, so you killed that guy. I understood that. I saw the ones that had driven drunk, and I'm like, I did that. And it showed me like we don't judge, we don't. So it was interesting I was very young, and it was really confusing because I had more connection with the inmate and their humanity. Some of them were mothers than I had with the staff because it was very militaristic and it was a horribly toxic environment.
I'm
So
sure.
I'm supposed to be with the guards and I'm siding with it. It was just a weird, but I never got over that. There, but for the grace of God, go I. How dare I judge? Like I would have, good for you for killing that man that was abusing you. I get it. I understand
Sure.
how to make that choice. And so it really set me up at a very young age to go, there's not that much difference. So that was a big kind of a like lifeline
Mhm.
to get at a very young codependent age.
Right. And interesting. You were young, codependent,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
in working in a prison environment, which doesn't sound ideal.
Not good. Yeah, I would have liked to go back and go, yeah, in terms of hiring, let's ask better questions,
Oh,
because if I'm here to save the world and y'all are just here to lock them up and punish and throw away the key, like you shouldn't hire people with bleeding hearts. You should hire people because what ended up happening is I got so lost. I felt guilty leaving. Like
hmm.
I was so, again, I was kind of a dependent. I literally was like, I was so connected with them, so ended up
Yeah.
kind of, that was a hard few years of doing that, but
Wow. Well, yeah, they're really, really interesting. I mean, I wonder what their hiring process is like now, but you've been, I don't know.
yes, yes,
Makes one
oof,
wonder. Yes. But,
yes, yes,
this is really interesting. We're on to a topic that I wanted to ask you about as well, and it's mission driven. So you're very
yeah,
mission driven as you spoke about. And
yeah.
do you have a particular cause or mission or something that's really, really
That's
special to you?
that's a really good question. Years ago, I was at a retreat with a mentor, and it was figure out, figure out who you're here to support, and oh, we're
Mhm.
going to raise money for in Africa to get water. I gave a bunch of money, but I feel like I'm kind of an asshole because I don't care about that as much. And I'm like, what is wrong with me?
Uh,
My mission is to help, particularly women, because if I can have a successful business, I couldn't leave my because I wasn't making enough money. And a lot of women are either staying in marriages or under earning because they
mhm,
don't know how or don't believe in themselves. And so they're trapped. And so what I know is if I help a woman make a decent income, A, it contributes to the economy. There's a huge ripple effect. B, her children are going to demonstrate, they'll see the demonstration of a success because I was raised with freaking Jim Cleaver. Like I'm a 6-year-old woman. I was not raised with role models of powerful women. And so, yes, I gave a lot of money to the, water in Africa, but my mission is I love part of my values are like bold self-expression. And so when I can get somebody's business to be a beautiful reflection of them where they get to do their soul's work in the world, woo, that is my sweet spot.
All right. Yeah.
What it is.
Yeah. I love that. And if you are out there, ladies listening to this, I mean, this is something that we see all too often. And, I saw it in all of the years that I was in
Right.
family mediation. I would see people, men and women, but of course, it's a
Mhm.
lot of women that
Yes.
stay in relationships out of economic reasons or for
100%.
fear of what else is out there, fear of change. And
Yeah.
yeah, people, we've all seen them making themselves miserable. So if someone's in that situation, what words would you have for them?
Well, it depends where they are in it. Um,
Mhm.
I I'm a very big believer in everything starts with a decision. And
Yeah.
so you don't have to know the how exactly, but you can decide that, from this day, I'm open to the next iteration of me. And again, that's where you just release it. But you decide, like, I'm no longer accepting this. This is going to change. And then when you get real definitive with your decision, then spirit can bring in a new possibility or a new person you're going to connect with, or just some other resource that guides you to the next step. But I think most people get really scared and they think they're enough. And I've always been supported. I mean, I went through bankruptcy after the divorce. I mean, I have been up and down and crazy stuff. And I'm always supported. I'm always supported. So when you connect with, okay, all right, God, or whatever you call it, like, take me, you'll be taken care of.
Yeah.
You'll be taken
Yeah.
care of.
Yes. Right. And it's the surrender to that, and just the knowledge that comes
Yeah.
with time.
Yes.
We aren't
Yes.
all born with it. I guess if we were, we wouldn't be here having this conversation. My
We'd be out of
podcast would be
business.
about something else. Yeah.
Right.
It,
Right.
it, it would be about sports or something else, which I love. But yeah, have a different
Well,
title.
you're doing this. It's good that you're doing this. You're
Right.
doing
Yes.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're not um, raised like that. As you
Mm-mm.
mentioned, we're not raised. But even if you had really positive emotional and psychological role
Mm-hmm.
models, empowering role models, still, as human beings, our conditioning is really thick. And
Yeah.
you're right that it's all about a decision. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so what would you say is the most important decision that you've ever made in your life?
Wow. Well, gosh, that's a big one. Um, I really think being a business coach was because everything cascaded. And then I was in a relationship a number of years ago, and I was so unhappy, so unhappy, so
Mm,
unhappy. And this person was living with me and didn't have a lot of resources. It was horrible. And I just am like, I'm okay if he goes to the streets. And I use the words recovering codependent for my,
okay.
and it was a decision of like, I have to choose me and be not concerned for the outcome for him, because I had a pattern of always taking care of people. Therapist, right?
Right.
Married an addict. Hello, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so for me to, and this was like lots of years ago, to basically say, I'm choosing me. And that decision has been really important. I was walking down, I was walking my dog, and I literally saw the universe open this portal, and I'm like, oh, there's a whole lot of other things yourself. What? Because I was so unhappy in that relationship, and that was a big one. So,
Okay. Yeah, it just occurred to me off the top of my head to ask
hmm.
that. Yeah, because I mean, there's the show title, Decide to Transform. I mean, it really is
Well, there we
all
go.
about
There we go.
decisions. And yeah, and so that's the most significant decision you've made. And all of us listening, I mean, we resist making these decisions and resist
Oh
and
yes,
resist,
yes,
right? And
yes.
resist and Therese, as you've talked about, it can build up. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if there's somebody out there that can relate to what you're saying here, your experience, and maybe they'd like to pursue a conversation with you, maybe
Mm-hmm.
work with you, how would these folks reach out?
I would love that. Well, my website is just thereseskelly.com, my name. There's a contact form in there. You could find me on Facebook, Therese Skelly, or ts@thereseskelly.com. So just
Okay.
go to Therese Skelly and everywhere you go. I also have a Facebook group called the Fiercely Brilliant, like Living Fiercely Brilliant. So that if you want to just join the Facebook group, that's kind of I play in there a lot. But I would love to have a conversation with you if this resonates. And I don't just do business coaching. I do mainly business coaching. But lots of times I work with people on transformation in their lives as well. Usually it's business, but if you're like, God, I really love her vibe. I want support with the shame, but I don't have a business. Reach out. It's super fun to do that as well. I
Okay.
don't take that off the table. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. And the name of the Facebook group again is the Fiercely
Fiercely
Brilliant.
brilliant.
Okay.
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, the Fiercely Brilliant, and it's thereseskelly.com and the
Yeah.
email TS,
TS
correct?
initials. Yeah.
Okay. ts@thereseskelly.com. Now, this brings up another question that
Okay.
I've got for you. You're an author as well. And you're an
Yeah.
author of a best-selling book, and we cannot conclude this show without talking a little bit about that. So tell us the title of your book and a little bit more about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the title is called Love-Based Mission: How to Create a Business That Serves Your Soul. Because Tomas,
Okay.
there are many people that have businesses and or make boatloads of money and they're miserable.
Mhm.
And so why spend any time if it's not good? To me, I'm all about, getting your soul's expression out in the world, right? And if you
Yeah.
can make a business around that, whoo, that's a sweet spot.
Mhm.
So the hypothesis is, I mean, some people are very happy being employees or, being stay-at-home parents, but there are those of us who absolutely understand that our soul's work, our purpose, our mission is being lived out through our business. Like
Mhm.
that's ours. Like for me, my business is my ministry, right? And I'm very aware of that. But when that is the case for you, it comes with some issues because I always say when you're up for sale, when you are the commodity, when you're the thing that you're selling, whoa, that's when the mindset gets you. That's when the gremlins like really kick in.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so like I share the story of, I came into this with a lot of codependency, as a lot, like every one of my clients come in over giving, undervaluing. Like it's pretty standard. And maybe you can tell me, I don't know if it's more so with women, but I think women over 50 have been socialized in different ways, right? And so we
Yes.
come in with these codependent caretaking patterns and we kind of sabotage our businesses because of it. So we want to serve, but we got some stuff that gets in the way. And so the book is about that, like how to understand what it is, how to navigate it, and then what to do instead.
Okay. Well, and it's very interesting because there are a number of listeners that fall in that demographic.
Mm-hmm.
Women, yeah, I would say women that we call it middle-aged,
Yes,
50, 60, 40, whatever the
yes, yes.
age. And I think you're right. I think that an entire generation of people was raised differently. We look at our parents'
Mm-hmm.
generation, and it's
Mm-hmm.
vastly different than the way we are raised.
Yes, right.
And yeah, and then our kids, completely different
Mm-hmm.
scenario.
Oh
So
my gosh. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
it's always different. So I think that's really, really powerful. That's really helpful. And this is called Love-Based Mission: Create a Business That Serves Your Life.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Now, is this available on ebook, audiobook,
Um,
paperback?
it's on Amazon or whatever bookseller you get, Barnes or wherever you get your booksellers. It's Kindle and a physical paper,
Beautiful.
physical
Okay.
book
Yeah.
as well.
I love this. And then, so Therese, this has been a pleasure, and I've learned so much. And thank you so much for going in depth into your own experience, because that's what I mean, that's what we're here for, is
Exactly.
to take a
Exactly.
deeper dive. So I really do appreciate your time here. And the theme that keeps recurring is overcoming codependency, overcoming
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
self-doubt, that sense of self-worth. Now, one last thing before we wrap up. If someone's out
Okay.
there listening and they're in that position, they're codependent and they know it, for
Yes.
example, what concluding words would you have for someone?
I think a lot of codependency is an identity. And so, but most of us don't think of ourselves as having or being an identity. It's just like, but I'm a loving person, right? Or, oh, everybody goes to, right? Like we have these things in ourselves and we don't understand, but that might be an identity you've taken on to get.
Mhm.
And so for me, I always had to, myself up, take care of everybody, be there for everybody at my own expense all the time, usually. And that worked. It was basically a compensation from a dysfunctional childhood. I learned, okay, if I be that for everybody, I'll get a little bit of goodies.
Right.
But then after a while, it flames out. It was like, oh, good God, do I got to take care of another person, right? Like, and so if you understand that your identity is not finite, your identity is not like locked in cement, you can change. And I remember, the person I told you about that relationship, when the bad one ended, I was I was going, I feel like such a bitch. And then I'm like, oh, that's new. Oh my God, I've never had what? Like because I never would have allowed myself to have the aim to set a good boundary. But I kind of, made it a pejorative, like, oh, you're being such a bitch. And then I was like,
Right.
whoa, wait, or this is energizing me. Wait a minute. You know what I mean? And so you can change identity. Like it's literally the question is, who do you want to be? And if you
Yes.
understand, I can be what I'm not now. I'm going to take a lot of what I am, but I can be a different version of myself. It's very possible.
It is. It is possible. It's 100% possible. So yes, you can change. And if you're
Mhm.
listening out there, be sure to take a look at Therese's book, Love-Based Mission, Creating a Business That Serves Your Life. And of course, listen to this podcast
Yeah.
and take a look at Therese's Facebook group,
Thank you.
Fiercely Brilliant, and ThereseSkelly.com. This is very deep. It's very important work, and it's
Thank you.
very necessary. And Therese, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the show here today. It's really been a
You've been a
pleasure.
delight. Thank you. Thank you. It's been a great interview. You asked fabulous questions, and I've enjoyed hanging out with you so much. So,
Thank you. Well, it's been fun hanging out, and this is Mama T right here. Therese Skelly. All
signing
right.
out.
Yes, this has been Decide to Transform. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you again here soon.